Do you worry about Republic coming and shouting things?
Everyone has a right to think what they want.
And I felt, you're losing people every single time you have those headlines. We all get that there's a really big urgent message.
Prince William caught Camilla's son using his private estate. What he did next shocked everyone. The British royal family has always had secrets. Behind the gates of their large estates, there are private talks, quiet decisions, and hidden tensions beneath their public smiles. But sometimes, something leaks out. A palace insider speaks up. A staff member reveals too much. And when that happens, the truth spreads quickly, faster than anyone inside Buckingham Palace would want. And right now, something is spreading. And people can't stop talking about it. It started the way most royal stories do, quietly and in the background, hidden behind official events and careful statements. But those who were paying attention, the ones close to the inner circle, noticed small changes. For months, they have been watching something grow. This situation touches on royal inheritance, personal loyalty, and a past the monarchy has never fully moved on from. At the center of it all is a property, a very important part of royal real estate. At the center of it all is a property, a very important part of royal real estate. And it involves Prince William and Camilla's son, two names that don't sit comfortably together. But before we get to what is allegedly happening now, there is a longer story that needs to be told. Because nothing inside the British royal family happens without history behind it. And this particular story has roots that go back further than most people realize. September 8th, 2022, was a day that changed everything. The late Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, ending a reign of 70 years and beginning a new chapter for the British monarchy. The nation grieved, the world watched, and inside the palace, away from the spotlight, things started to change. Not just titles and roles, but property too. Most people know that the grand official residences, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, belong not to any individual member of the royal family, but to the crown itself. They are institutional properties. They pass automatically from one sovereign to the next, and no one person can claim them, sell them, or make private decisions about them. They are, in every sense that matters, the property of the nation. But running alongside those official residences is a separate and far more personal category of royal property. Private estates, homes that members of the royal family have purchased with their own money or inherited through direct family lines. These are governed by different rules entirely, and it is here, in this quieter, less publicly scrutinized world of private royal property, where the most significant decisions are made and where the most significant tensions tend to arise. When the Queen died, her two most significant private estates, Sandringham House in Norfolk and Balmoral Castle in Scotland, passed directly to King Charles III. This was expected. Both estates had been part of the royal family's private holdings for well over a century. Sandringham, in particular, carries a weight that goes far beyond its 8,000 acres of Norfolk countryside. It was purchased in 1862 by the royal family during the reign of Queen Victoria, originally intended as a private retreat for the then Prince of Wales. Over the decades that followed, it became something far more personal. It was where King George VI spent his final days, passing away there in February 1952. It was the place that Queen Elizabeth II returned to year after year, the property she reportedly considered her true private home. When she died at Balmoral, it felt to many like the end of a life closely tied to the family's private land. Charles inherited both without drama or delay. That part was good and expected. What was more complicated and much less expected by those outside the inner circle was the fate of Highgrove. Let's see what became of this historic estate. Highgrove House sits in the Gloucestershire countryside, a Georgian property surrounded by roughly 900 acres of farmland and gardens that have, over the years, become something of a national talking point. The house itself is handsome but not ostentatious. It is the land around it, the gardens in particular, that set it apart. Planted, shaped, and tended according to a deeply personal vision of organic farming and environmental stewardship, the grounds at Highgrove are as much a reflection of the man who shaped them as any formal portrait or public speech. That man is Charles, and his connection to Highgrove goes back to 1980. It was the year his engagement to Lady Diana Spencer was announced, and the search was on for a country home befitting the young couple who would one day lead the monarchy. Highgrove was purchased from the estate of the late Maurice Macmillan for approximately £800,000. The purchase was made through the Duchy of Cornwall, the vast and ancient estate that provides the Prince of Wales with his private income, and that has, for centuries, belonged not to the crown, but to the heir apparent, whoever holds the title of Prince of Wales at any given time. That fact would become very important 42 years later. When Charles became king in September 2022, he ceased, at that same moment, to be the Duke of Cornwall. The dukedom, and with it, the Duchy of Cornwall's properties and income passed automatically to Prince William, who was formally confirmed as both the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Cornwall. It was not a gift. It was not a decision that Charles made or could unmake. It was simply the law, operating as it had operated for centuries. What that meant for Highgrove was not immediately made public. Charles had poured 40 years of his life into that estate. The gardens alone represented a personal legacy that he had spoken about with obvious emotion on many occasions. In a 2011 interview, he described Highgrove's grounds as "my own little paradise," a place where he had been able to express values about the natural world that he had spent his entire adult life trying to promote. Letting it go, as kingship required, was something he hadn't been fully prepared for emotionally. There were secret conversations, the kind that are never officially recorded, about Highgrove's future. Those close to Charles say that his intention, never formally stated but clearly understood by those around him, was always that the estate would remain in family hands, that William would, in time, take genuine ownership of it, just as Charles had shaped it into what it became, that the Duchy of Cornwall would pass, along with its history and its responsibilities, from one generation of the heir apparent to the next. Meanwhile, Camilla was there, and her presence changes everything, even the story you're about to hear. Her journey within the royal family had been one of the most remarkable in modern British history. She had gone from a woman whom a significant portion of the British public openly blamed for the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage, to the woman who stood beside Charles at his coronation on May 6, 2023, crowned Queen Consort in Westminster Abbey before the eyes of the world. It had taken a long time and a planned campaign to win back public approval, and it had not come without cost to her public image, to Charles's relationship with his sons, and to the internal dynamics of a family that was already carrying the weight of Diana's legacy like an open wound. Charles's decision, back in 2005, to marry Camilla despite the public opposition had sent a ripple through the royal family that never entirely settled. For William, 22 at the time of the wedding, who had grown up watching his mother suffer during the marriage's end, accepting Camilla in his father's life was never simple or easy. He had managed it well. Publicly, he was polite. He stood beside Camilla at events, spoke about family, and showed the kind of control the royal family prizes. But politeness does not equal trust. And there was one area in particular where William's caution around Camilla had always been most visible to those watching closely. It was the area of royal property, the estates, the homes that represented not just financial value, but the physical legacy of the monarchy itself, the places where Diana had once lived, the places that William saw as part of his children's inheritance and his family's future. That caution, those who know him say, was never paranoia. It was pattern recognition. Camilla's arrival in the royal family had quietly but significantly changed the way royal property was managed. In 2020, it was reported that Charles had purchased Ray Mill House in Wiltshire for Camilla, a property that gave her a private retreat entirely her own, away from official royal residences. It showed personal loyalty, but critics said it set a new example. Money linked to the royal family going to a woman whose position had always been questioned, buying a home outside the usual inheritance rules. Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, had already spent years dealing with the complicated situation his mother's relationship with Charles had created. By trade, he was a food writer and critic, charming and polite in public. He was neither fully part of the royal family nor entirely separate from it. He attended royal events, moved in royal circles, and visited properties most people could never enter. Those who saw it were the insiders, not the press or the public. People inside noticed that Tom Parker Bowles had grown familiar with spaces not officially his, a familiarity that developed slowly. No one said anything yet, but royal estates remember everything. For Prince William, who knows every detail of ownership and history, nothing slips by. But behind the scenes, something was happening that would soon explode into public view. Tom Parker Bowles had always been at ease in any space. That was never disputed. Even before his mother became queen consort, he had a reputation for moving through elite circles as if he belonged. Royal family rooms aren't like other rooms. Those who know the rules of power, property, and position notice details others miss. They see who is invited, who isn't, and when someone acts like a place is theirs before it officially is. By late 2023, certain members of the royal household staff had begun to notice exactly that. The property in question sits within a stretch of English countryside that has been connected to the royal family for generations. It is not Buckingham Palace. It is not one of the grand ceremonial residences that appears on tourist maps. It is the kind of property that the British public knows exists, but rarely thinks about. These properties follow tradition. They go to the rightful heirs, and outsiders cannot live in them without approval. Well, this is more than just tradition. According to the Duchy of Cornwall Act, all land and property of the duchy belong to the Prince of Wales. When that title transfers, as it transferred to William in September 2022, those assets transfer with it. Nobody can secretly renegotiate it, even if they are close to the king. William understood this better than almost anyone. He had, in the months following his father's accession, worked carefully with the duchy's legal and financial teams to understand the full scope of what had passed into his stewardship. It was not a simple portfolio. The Duchy of Cornwall covers roughly 135,000 acres of land across 23 counties, with properties ranging from urban buildings in London's Kennington to farmland in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. The income generated from those holdings runs into tens of millions of pounds annually. Managing it responsibly, William had made clear to those around him, was not a task he intended to treat lightly. Against this background, discussions inside the palace started to change. Since his cancer diagnosis in February 2024, King Charles continued his duties, but his health added uncertainty to decisions about estates and property. Camilla, as queen, quietly took on more influence behind the scenes. She proved highly strategic, knowing which decisions to make visible and which to handle secretly. Her relationship with Highgrove was a good example of how that worked in practice. In that uncertain period, Camilla was often present at Highgrove. She continued to use parts of the estate as if the duchy's transition to William hadn't changed her access. Staff noted that the routines of the property stayed much the same as when Charles was Prince of Wales, and Camilla was his companion. No one had paid much attention to the fact that her son was now part of the estate's routines. Tom Parker Bowles had been photographed near the Highgrove estate on several occasions during 2025 and into 2026. On its own, that meant very little. He was the Queen's son, but the staff members who spoke carefully about what they had observed described something that felt different from a casual visit. In December 2025, one long-serving member of the estate's household staff reportedly mentioned, in conversation with a colleague, that Mr. Parker Bowles had been seen on the grounds on multiple occasions when neither the king nor the queen was in residence. The colleague, according to the account that later circulated quietly through the household, had simply shrugged and said, "He comes when she tells him he can." That sentence, small as it was, landed differently depending on who heard it. By January 2026, it had reached someone who was not a member of staff. It had reached a member of William's inner circle. The person who brought it to William's attention was not a courtier or a palace official. It was someone considerably closer to him than that, a friend from his years at Sandhurst, one of the trusted group of people outside the formal palace structure that William had kept close throughout his adult life. The conversation happened over dinner at Adelaide Cottage, the modest Windsor property where William and Princess Catherine had settled with their 3 children after their move from Kensington Palace in 2022. It was a quiet evening, early December, the kind that William apparently preferred away from the formality of official settings. "There's something you should probably know," his friend said, setting down his glass. "It might be nothing, but given everything, I thought you'd want to hear it from me rather than somewhere else." William listened. He did not interrupt. Those who know him well say that is one of his most consistent habits. He hears things fully before he responds to them. When his friend finished speaking, there was a long pause. "How many times?" William asked. "More than a few," came the reply, "and not just passing through." That was all that was said about it that evening, but it was enough. What William did with that information in the days that followed was not to confront anyone. Not immediately. That would have been out of character. He is, by every credible account, a man who operates with considerable discipline when something unsettles him. He does not react. He assesses. He gathers information. He ensures that what he believes he knows is actually what is happening before he decides what to do about it. People who know him well describe this as one of his key qualities. He grew up seeing what happens when royal family members act on emotion instead of thinking carefully, including his parents' marriage breaking down and the painful details appearing in newspapers across Britain. He also saw his mother give a 1995 BBC interview, which she later said was done in deep personal pain rather than with careful planning, and it changed the course of the monarchy. By early February, Princess Catherine had finished her cancer treatment and was back to carrying out her royal duties. For William, that was an enormous relief, but anyone who has watched someone they love go through cancer knows that the worry does not simply disappear when the treatment ends. He was still watching, still careful. On top of that, King Charles was clearly not well. The palace was doing its best to manage the narrative, but the signs were hard to miss. Fewer public appearances, decisions being passed down to others, a king who was visibly slowing down. Nobody in the royal family was saying it out loud, but they were all thinking the same thing. What happens next, and how soon? For William, that question made the matter of his inheritance feel urgent in a way it had never quite felt before. Keep watching to know what he did next. Camilla, at this time, had settled into her role as queen, attending the right events and keeping a clean public image. But those who knew her privately said she was more relaxed about the limits of her role than she appeared. Her son Tom was similar. When asked about the royal estates, he called them places of real peace. Honestly, the kind of places where you just feel like time slows down. Most took it as a casual comment, but insiders heard it as someone speaking about a place he knew very well. Two separate members of the Highgrove estate staff had, independently of each other, mentioned to trusted colleagues that Tom Parker Bowles had been on the grounds at least 3 times in the preceding 4 months, without either the king or the queen being present on the estate. One of those occasions had apparently involved an overnight stay. The details were thin, and neither staff member had made a formal report through any official channel. They were observations, not complaints. In a household where everyone knew the Duchy of Cornwall and its properties were now William's, those observations mattered. The question nobody had asked aloud was simple. Had William been told? And if not, who decided he didn't need to know? That question was slowly coming to the surface, and it was about to get its answer. The answer came just recently, and it did not arrive through any official channel. A senior member of the Duchy of Cornwall's estate management team had been conducting a routine review of property usage logs across several of the Duchy's holdings. These reviews happen periodically, largely as an administrative exercise. What the review turned up, buried inside usage records for a property connected to the Highgrove estate, was something that did not match any authorized entry on the official visitor record. One night, the estate's internal security and heating systems recorded an overnight stay on a date when no royal family member was known to be at Highgrove. The booking was traced through staff communications, and the name attached wasn't a royal nor a formally invited guest of the Duke of Cornwall's office. It was Tom Parker Bowles, a person with no official role or permission within the Duchy's structures. The estate manager, doing his job, flagged the unusual booking. He sent an internal note to the Duchy of Cornwall's principal private secretary, asking whether the visit had been authorized by the Duke's office, and if so, under what terms. The reply did not come from the Duke's office. Instead, a member of the Queen's household staff said the arrangement had been made with the Queen's knowledge and didn't need further attention. That answer, however, was wrong. Highgrove and its associated properties fell under William's authority, not the Queen's. Once the note and reply reached the Duchy's legal office, the issue was no longer just an administrative matter, it had become a serious problem. William was informed on a Tuesday morning in the second week of March 2026. He was at his desk at his Windsor home when his private secretary placed the relevant documents in front of him: the usage log, the flag discrepancy, the estate manager's note, and the reply from the Queen's office. He read through them without speaking. Those present in the room said the silence lasted longer than felt comfortable, but those who knew about the dinner conversation months earlier understood that this was not the silence of a man caught off guard. William had known something was coming. His friend had made sure of that. What he was holding in his hands now was simply the proof he had been waiting for, the moment when a suspicion became a fact. And a fact required action. When he finally looked up, his expression, according to one person present, was not rage. It was something quieter, and in some ways, more unsettling than rage. It was the look of a man who had suspected something for months, and had just been handed the confirmation he had been both seeking and dreading. "Who else has seen this?" he asked. "The estate manager, the legal office, and now you, sir," his private secretary replied. "Nobody speaks to the press. Nobody speaks to anyone outside this room until I say otherwise." He closed the folder. What happened in the hours that followed involved a series of phone calls made with great care and in strict sequence. The first was to William's most senior legal advisor within the Duchy structure. The second was to a trusted intermediary who had, over the years, helped manage the more sensitive communications between William's household and his father's. The third, and the one that people close to William say was the most important, was a conversation with King Charles himself. A conversation between a father and his son, and between a king and his heir, is private, and no one outside the two of them can fully claim to know what was said. What became known afterward, through the small circle of people close enough to both men to understand the mood of the discussion, was that it was not a brief conversation, and it was not an easy one. King Charles, according to those who know him, did not dismiss the issue. He did not brush it off, or tell William it was just a minor administrative matter. He had seen too many problems caused by leaving things unresolved to make that mistake now. At the same time, people close to him say he was in a difficult position. His health had reduced his capacity. The authorization had come through his wife's household, and Tom Parker Bowles was his stepson, a man he had known since childhood, whose mother he had loved for nearly 40 years. "I understand why you're bringing this to me," Charles reportedly told William, "and you are right to bring it to me. This should not have happened the way it happened." Those who heard the conversation say that what mattered most to William was that his father acknowledged the issue. It wasn't a grand solution or a dramatic confrontation. It was simply his father recognizing that what had happened was not acceptable under the rules that governed these properties, that William's control of the duchy was real and could not be bypassed quietly by anyone, no matter who their mother was. Steps were taken. A formal communication was issued through the duchy's office, clarifying the protocols around access to properties under its management, and making clear that all future arrangements for any visitor, under any circumstances, required authorization from the Duke of Cornwall's office. Camilla has not made any public comment on the matter. She has continued to carry out her royal duties as normal, and no formal statement has come from her office. Whether she and William spoke about it privately is something neither side has confirmed, but the actions that followed spoke clearly enough. Through the Duchy of Cornwall's office, a formal directive was issued restricting Tom Parker Bowles from accessing the Highgrove estate and its associated properties. However, because his mother is the Queen, he has not been barred from official palace events or royal gatherings where the family comes together. That line was drawn deliberately. William was not looking to create a public scandal. He was looking to protect what was his. But it didn't end there. Shortly after the directive was issued, William reached out personally to the friend who had first brought the matter to his attention over dinner months earlier. It was a brief exchange, but a deliberate one. He thanked him for saying something when he did, and told him plainly that the matter had been dealt with through the right channels. His friend, by all accounts, simply said he was glad William knew. That was the end of it between them. Tom has continued to appear at events, write about food, and carry on publicly as though nothing has changed. But within the circles that matter, the situation is well understood. And the door was shut. Prince William handled it the way he handles most things, without drama and without leaving any room for misunderstanding. The estates he inherited are not informal spaces that can be used by whoever has the right connections. They belong to the Duchy of Cornwall. They belong to him, and he made sure that was no longer in any doubt. Do you think Prince William should have arrested Tom Bowles instead of handling the matter quietly? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also, click on the next video on your screen. You won't want to miss it.